Plato famously said that all learning is actually remembering. So the question is, in a world where God doesn't exist in the way that we typically understand God to exist, and there was no creation, how is it that you exist? The truth is that you have always existed. You are eternal. You have simply forgot. And today we're going to be exploring how to rationally understand through logic that you must exist and have always existed. And this is eternity. This is not 1,000 years. This is not 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000, or even 1,000,000,000,000. It is eternity. You have no beginning and you have no end. And we're going to be looking at exactly how that is possible, as always, through the lens of logic and reason, while being intuitively plugged into the source of existence. It's going to be good. This is important information, stuff that you need to know. Some of the most important information, really the foundation of yourself and all reality. This is the crux of the issue, the ground, the foundation. It's necessary to know. So before we get started, as always, please like and subscribe. That helps people see this information and get this information out, because it's not just about making videos. It's about raising consciousness. And the more people that see this, it acts as a catalyst to get their mind turning and realizing and understanding what they are. And from that, we can create a better world. So please like, subscribe. Help people see this information, helps out a lot. And also, if you enjoy my work and you want to support and see this channel grow and help me create bigger and better videos, support over on Patreon. That is the best way to support my work. That's patreon.com/MorgueOfficial. And you get access to all of our members only videos, and there are a lot of them, with a new one every single week. And in fact, we're having a new members only video right after this called Science is Losing the War on Consciousness, as we take a look at science versus mind versus science. So to access all that, support at any tier on Patreon, or tier 2 or higher on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video. Also, be on the lookout. There are a lot of scammers in the comments. I keep seeing more and more. There are people pretending to be me, saying to join my WhatsApp, join my Telegram. They're even DMing people on different platforms. That's not me, okay? I don't have a WhatsApp. I don't have a Telegram. Don't fall for it. Also, there are people and groups out there who don't like what I'm doing and don't like what we're doing, and they are spreading a lot of misinformation and disinformation about me and our group and what we do. So just use logic and reason. Don't fall for their bullshit, and keep your mind open. All right, here we go, my friends. You have always existed. You were not created. You are not the product of some god in the sky, and you're not a random accident caused by the random formation of molecules over billions of years. That is not what you are. You are not something created. You have always existed and always will exist. And we're going to be diving into the fundamental nature of reality and what it has to do with subjectivity and consciousness in general. And to begin to look at this, we're going to be taking a look at an article on medium.com, as usual, that is written by Deepak Chopra. And if you enjoy this article, as always, go over to medium.com, give Deepak Chopra a follow, because it's a very interesting article and a very good article. But it has some things that we need to take a look at. Let me move this over here. It has some information that we must take a look at that has to do with the things that we talk about here on this channel. And this particular article, the reason why it's relevant, it says, why a better creation story is no creation story, saying the search for some kind of creation story is actually not where one should be looking. The fact that there is no creation story is what's important. And this is going to tie in together to understand the fact that you are an eternal being, because we want to look at this. We want to get the wheels turning, because look, the reason why that you don't remember that you are an eternal being is twofold. One, because at the beginning of time and beginning of reality, I'm sorry, not the beginning of reality, reality is eternal, but the beginning of time and space, because that's the difference, by the way. Let me throw that out there. Space-time is not eternal. The physical universe is not eternal. The physical universe goes through cycles of going from a big bang to a big crunch, from singularity to singularity. But the ultimate reality that underpins the physical reality is a domain of mind. And that is eternal. That is the fundamental reality that gives birth to all the different sort of phenomenal experiences that we have within the space-time domain, what we call the holos in the Neogenian system. Now, you and all of us, and we'll if this is going to sound probably like a lot at first, but we're going to be unpacking it little by little. At the beginning of time, we threw ourselves into a state of forgetfulness and into an unconscious state. And this is for the purpose of being able to experience ourselves in our particularity. And if that seems like, well, why would we do that? That seems crazy. I don't understand. We're going to be explaining exactly why that is the case. But that's one reason. Now, another reason why that you don't remember what you are or where you are or why you are here is that even though you are eternal, physical bodies, of course, are not. Physical bodies have been going through a process of evolution over billions of years. And how do physical bodies evolve, or for what purpose? The purpose originally, when evolution is in its unconscious stage, because later evolution becomes conscious through us, but in its initial stages, evolution is unconscious, and so it is obsessed with one singular purpose, and that is adaptation and survival. And adaptation and survival entails an avatar that develops, of course, for you to be able to adapt and survive. And guess what is very good at allowing you to adapt and survive? Is to being focused only on what is around you in your immediate vicinity, so you can focus on things like predators, mating, gathering food, things like that, focusing on your immediate surroundings so that you can be aware of predators and resources and opportunities to propagate. So this entails a filtering mechanism of all superfluous information, because evolution doesn't care about you knowing truth. Evolution in its unconscious stages is just about developing an avatar that can survive. So if you have, let's say, one being that is contemplating the electron spin on the other side of a galaxy, some other creature that's focused on the here and now is going to come on over and eat that creature, leading that creature to go extinct, and the creatures that are focused on the immediate survival to propagate via natural selection. So the brain is actually a filtering mechanism for what you are. You are an eternal soul. You are an eternal being. Your brain and acts as a filter or reducing valve for the mind. So I'm getting ahead of myself here, though. Let's really take a look at this, and this will all fit together. So Chopra says, it will seem very strange, but you can't know where you came from unless you know where everything came from. And that's a very good point. You can't know where you came from unless you know where everything came from. And we're going to find out that the truth is that everything comes from you. Everything comes from you. Everything comes from us. And that might seem kind of crazy. How can you understand that? But the truth is that you get firsthand experience of your power every time you go to sleep and dream at night. When you go to sleep and dream at night, you're exploring an entire universe created by your mind. You're exploring an entire world full of people and places and entities, and not actual living entities, but ones that your mind has conjured up, ones that your mind has created, and you're interacting, and it's so believable that you take it to be true. Unless you're lucid in the dream, you really think that it's actual reality. So if you think about a dream, where does everything in the dream come from? From you. So we're going to see that everything in existence comes from us, because this is very much a shared mathematical dream that we're all having together of frequencies. It's collective and stable because of all of our contributions to it as foundational creators. Now, we are not created, we are creators, and that we are able to transform energy. We are beings of energy, we are beings of frequency, able to, remember, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So when I say that we are creators, it's not as though we are creating energy, but we are transforming energy. And the various transformations that energy can take is in the form of a space-time domain. You can transform frequency in such a way that it gives rise to space and time. So Deepak Chopra continues by saying, your origin is the same as the origin of the universe. What makes this a strange statement is that the universe, by common agreement, began 13.8 billion years ago, whereas you began much sooner than that. This poses a quantum riddle, and he says, nature creates, and he says that he has an answer in his book called quantum body. So hey, if you enjoy this article, go check out Quantum Body. I haven't read it. I don't know what it's about. But if you enjoy what this person, Deepak, says, go check out their book. So Deepak says, let me give you a preview, which leads to a revolutionary idea. Nature creates everything in existence, but nature can't create itself. There is no process that gives rise to nature as a whole, yet something must have allowed everything to exist in the first place. The only viable candidate is consciousness. Here's why. So this is a very interesting idea. Deepak Chopra says nature cannot create itself. There is nothing that gives rise to nature as a whole. He says the only valuable candidate is consciousness. Here's why. So we're going to take a look at this and unpack this and see if, what this individual is saying. Now, right away, I honestly don't know much about Deepak Chopra, but so typically in philosophy, if you're referring to nature, right? If you're referring to nature in philosophy, you're referring to the material world. So if that is the case, I don't agree that nature is, let's see, it says nature can't create itself. Yes, I agree with that. There is no process that gives rise to nature as a whole, yet something must have allowed. Let's continue and see what they say, because there is some important things to unpack here, and it's important to define our terms well, because confusion can arise from that. So this is a very good point. So Deepak Chopra says, when a very young child is old enough to ask, where did I come from? The parents need a quick white lie that avoids the truth. This is important. So don't let this go by as though it is inconsequential. It's very important. As you grow up as a child, you are looking for answers. And guess what? As a child, your rational faculties, your ability to reason, hasn't properly developed yet. I'm pretty sure that it's something like your rational faculties don't completely develop until you're somewhere around the age of 24 or something like that. It takes a very long time for the rational faculty of the mind to completely develop. So as a child, you're looking for answers, but your rational faculties haven't really developed. And you're looking for answers. You ask your parents, hey, where did I come from? Children often look to their parents as all-knowing, almost like gods. And so most children will take the answer in without question. And the thing is this gets ingrained in one's mind and often goes unchallenged and forms an individual's belief system for the rest of their life. This is where we see the brainwashing effects of mainstream religion. Now, Deepak Chopra uses the example that they'll say, oh, the stork brought you, or you were found under a tree. It says, yet there is something remarkable in the question because it shows one of the main qualities of self-awareness, the need for an origin. It doesn't satisfy a 4-year-old to think that we came out of nowhere. Somehow, starting very early, we crave to know how life began, and specifically how our life began. And that's very true. You're walking around, you're questioning, you're trying to understand the world. You want to know where you came from. You want to know where existence came from. If you think about your experience right now, I want you to think about your experience right now. You don't remember the moment that you were born, and you obviously have not yet died. You are existing right now in a moment of eternity. It's sort of like you're reading a book and you're in the middle of a story, but you don't ever remember starting to read the book. You can't remember how you began to read the book. You're just in the middle of the book and reading the story. And at some point in the story, you go, wait a minute, what is this book about? When did I start reading this book? But the truth is that there is no beginning to this story. This story is eternal. So if you think about your life right now, people are like, often wonder, well, what is eternity like? You are experiencing eternity right now. You have no beginning and you will have no end. there will be a beginning and end to the particular avatar that you have. Your physical body will begin and end, and we want to make sure that we take care of our body and are healthy so that we can remain cognizant of our actions and have this opportunity to learn and grow in the space-time domain and interact with each other. But you, as an eternal being, have no beginning and have no end. You have never experienced a beginning, and you will never experience an end. Therefore, you are experiencing eternity right now. The truth is, the enigma isn't so much eternity. You know, people are like, oh, well, what's eternity like? You are experiencing eternity right now. What you won't experience is a beginning or an end. And so the sort of irony here is that most people think that they understand beginnings and ends and don't understand eternity, when the truth is that you are experiencing eternity and will never experience a beginning or an end. You'll experience transitory phases. You'll experience phases where you transition from one avatar to another, or different domains that you're tuning into, or different experiences that you're having. But you will never experience a beginning, and you will never experience an end. In fact, an end is unimaginable. You cannot imagine not existing. It's an impossibility to imagine, to try and close your eyes and imagine yourself not existing. It's not possible. You can imagine darkness for a very long time, but you can't imagine not existing, because the very act of imagining requires existing. And eternity is what you are intimately familiar with. Beginnings and ends you have no relation to whatsoever. It's not something that you will never experience. And so Deepak Chopra continues by saying, but every origin has a fatal flaw. If X is the creator, who created X? It's a very good point. You know, if God is the creator, who created God? And I think this is another question that children have all the time. If you go, oh, well, God created the world, sometimes that's satisfying for a while, but as they get older, they might go, hey, wait a minute, what created God? And that's a very excellent question. And Deepak Chopra says, it doesn't help to say that Y created X, because that only pushes the question back a step, right? Like if you say, oh, well, God, I don't know, if God created the world, what created that God? And you go, oh, well, an even higher, more powerful God created that God. Well, it doesn't matter. That's turtles all the way down. You're just pushing the question one step back. And it's funny that, some people might think that that's obvious, but this happens in science all the time. This is why scientific materialism is just as dogmatic and blind as religion in some respects when it comes to the nature of reality. Because when it comes to how everything is, how we all exist, it draws a blank. There's a question of what came before the Big Bang, and it's like, well, we don't know, or there's no such thing as before, or it was a quantum vacuum. But that begs the question, well, where did the quantum vacuum come from? And that's supposed to be a state of a kind of nothingness, but it's not complete and total non-existence. It has some property. It has some thing to assign to it. So it's not just bare nothingness. Then you have other ideas like, oh, well, this is all a simulation. This is how we exist. It's all a simulation in some hyper-advanced alien species that's simulating a world to try and understand how things interact and work and get more information about evolution and development. So this is all just a sophisticated simulation in an alien hardware somewhere. Well, what created those aliens? What created the hardware that the simulation is running on? What is the cause of that world? And then you get other ideas as well. It's like string theory, for example, is another example. People trying to understand quantum phenomena, because in quantum mechanics, it's very strange. How is it that quantum mechanics can account for reality? Because everything seems like it's made from waveforms. Oh, well, string theory comes in and says, well, everything is actually made of 1D strings that are vibrating, that form all the different particles through their different modes of vibrations and harmonics. Well, then what created those strings? Where did those strings come from? What are those strings made of? How is it those strings exist? So you have this happen, in religion, where it's kind of obvious, like, well, what created God? I don't know what created God, or God is beyond our understanding, or whatever cop-out you want to throw in there. Same thing happens in scientific materialism, which is also very dogmatic and blind in many respects. The founder of quantum mechanics, Max Planck, pointed this out, and his words are paraphrased as saying that science progresses one funeral at a time, meaning that science is essentially dogmatic and brainwashed, and it's only until a new generation that hasn't been indoctrinated into those beliefs can begin to formulate new theories and new ideas, because they grow up around new theories and new ideas. But anyway, science, like I said, does this one also all the time, where they push the question back further, where it's like, oh, well, it's a simulation, or a quantum fluctuation, or string theory, etc. So anyway, but let's continue. So Chopra continues by saying, if God created the world, who created God? If the Big Bang created the universe, who created the Big Bang? You can substitute any creator you want, and the question of origin has no answer. And Chopra continues by saying, perhaps the cleverest creation story is a symbol, a serpent biting its tail, which the ancient Greeks named Ouroboros, but from which they derived from the ancient Egyptians. From the beginning, Ouroboros was a mystical symbol signifying the creation and destruction belong to the same circular process, the one embracing the other. Now, here's a really important part that we're going to see. So, Deepak Chopra is now going to talk about the concept of infinity, and this is very important. This concept of infinity is extremely important. Why? Because infinity is very much tied with eternity. Something that is infinite is something that never ends. And infinity is entailed in the concept of eternity, but in a very specific way, a cyclical way, because there is a difference between a linear infinity and a cyclical infinity. And that's very important to understand. That's critical to understand. If you look at a linear infinity, what's a linear infinity? A linear infinity is a line. If you imagine a line that extends in one or more directions, if you imagine a line that extends forwards or backwards or both, but infinitely, right? A line that goes on infinitely, that's a linear infinity. And there are some logical problems that come from a linear infinity. But what we're talking about here is not a linear infinity, but a cyclical infinity. And that is different. A cyclical infinity is, imagine a circle. A circle is infinite. A circle has no beginning and it has no end. You can imagine a point. Imagine a point traveling in a circular trajectory. Infinitely, eternally. This is infinite. However, it's a contained infinity. It's there. You can contain it. This is the circle. Here are its bounds. Here are its limits. Yet it is eternal. Linear infinity, not so much. It just goes on forever. It's very difficult to contain conceptually. But a cyclical infinity entails cycles that are eternally progressing, but in a contained way. And this is very beautifully symbolized in the Ouroboros symbol, which is in a snake eating its own tail. This is an infinite cyclical process. It's not a linear process. It's not a snake that's just stretching out for all eternity. It's a serpent that's going in a cyclical process. So he says, if you strip away the snake and the mysticism, the mathematical symbol for infinity implies that creation never began and will never end, which is also implied by Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a snake swallowing its tail. No child would be satisfied, however, to be told you came from infinity. If that's the correct answer, it needs an explanation. And if the explanation is correct, then just not newborns, but everyone and everything is constantly being created from infinity. Genesis wasn't then, it is now. All right, so here's the important thing. So Deepak Chopra is positing the idea of infinity and things always existing infinitely. But we also have to understand that with the concept of infinity also comes the concept of zero. And this is going to become very important because we want to understand, how is it possible that you exist? And that's the whole point of this. It's not just saying so much or stating the fact, oh, you exist as a brute fact. We all know that we exist. via just the brute fact of our existence, or the cogito, I think, therefore I am. We know that we have existence in some form. We know that we have being in some form or another. But we want to know specifically, if we are eternal, how is it that we are eternal? And we are, in fact, eternal. Now, this comes, there are two ways to understand this. Now, I often say there are two ways to understand this. One is the more correct and rigorous way. However, it takes a very long time to explain. And the other is true, but it's faster to explain, and it's more of an intuitive understanding. The very sort of long explanation has to do with the mandatory rational nature of your existence, in that you have to exist. You must exist. There is no way that you can't exist. And that's because non-existence is actually an impossible state. Why? Because existence is possible. Existence is the set of all things that are possible and actual, and you are what is possible and actual. Now, what I mean by that is reality is the generation of all things that does not lead to any sort of rational or logical inconsistencies. Now, this is both the simplest answer. The answer to existence is both the simplest and most complex. It's a very simple answer, but to understand it requires, an extreme level of self-reflection and a reflection on reality itself. The simple answer is that impossibility cannot exist because it's impossible. And existence can exist and must exist because it is possible. And that might seem sort of silly at first, just to be like, oh, existence is possible, so it must exist. And non-existence is impossible, so it can't exist. And this may seem sort of simplistic or a non-explanation, but the truth is this is the fundamental answer to all reality. Because what exists right now is all that can ever be. What exists right now, as far as the fundamental structure of reality, is all those things that have the possibility to exist and that can exist together without there being any sort of rational or logical contradiction. So let's take, for example, the idea 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 = 4 exists, and it is a necessary truth of reality. 2 + 2 = 68. That is not true, and that is impossible. So therefore, the relation 2 + 2 = 4 is possible and exists as a relation. 2 + 2 = 64 does not exist. It is impossible. So all those things, like 2 + 2 = 64, all of those things that contain within themselves rational contradictions are impossible and cannot exist. But all those things that are rationally compatible not only can exist, but must exist. They have to exist because there is nothing to prevent their existence from occurring. There's nothing to stop their existence from occurring. And what is incredibly important about this to understand is that what has to exist and what must exist is also subjectivity itself. What a lot of people call consciousness, but more accurately is sentience. The ability to experience, the ability to have experiences is necessarily entailed and embedded with the fundamental nature of reality. So think about it this way. Your subjectivity, the ability to experience and feel and think and have a subjective experience, right? That what it is like to be something. Everything that you are familiar with, all your experiences, all the pains and pleasures and hopes, every sort of experience that you have, the experience, subjectivity itself is not something that can be created. It is eternal. Imagine a world, just for a thought experiment, imagine a world without any subjectivity in it. No subjectivity. Everything is just external quantities. Think about it, if no subjectivity exists, how would subjectivity ever come to exist? How would it ever be created? The answer is that it's impossible. Subjectivity cannot be created. Now, a lot of people have been conditioned to think, oh, well, wait, what do you mean? It's just when we evolve and develop brains, atoms and molecules and neurons arrange themselves in a certain way that we become conscious. That's the narrative that scientific materialism has dogmatically spouted for centuries. However, the fact is that is a logical impossibility because, again, set that conditioning aside for a minute and think about it. How do atoms, right? If atoms, according to scientific materialism, right? According to scientific materialism, atoms have no inner aspect to them. There is no interiority, there is no subjectivity associated with matter. None whatsoever. No inner life to it. It's just external properties. So how is it that you can arrange something that has no subjectivity within it or associated with it in any way? How is it that one can arrange those that somehow subjectivity emerges from that? The answer is that it's impossible. There is no, science has been trying to understand this for years, and it's impossible. It's not possible. Subjectivity, interiority, is not something that can be created. It's not something that can arise because it is eternal. It is fundamental. It is something that must exist, has to exist, and will always exist. Why? Because it doesn't give rise to any rational and logical contradiction. There is nothing inherently rational or logically contradictory about having an internal subjective experience as long as those eternal subjective experiences are structured in a way that adheres to reason. Now, what about the opposite? What about where did matter come from? Well, if you go to sleep and dream at night, you realize that mind has the power to create the illusion of matter. When you go to sleep and dream at night, your mind creates the illusion of a material world. We know that mind or subjectivity has the ability to generate matter or the appearance of matter. There's no logical problem with that. So subjectivity entails experiences. We can transform experiences such that we experience a material world. But we cannot take lifeless dead matter and arrange it in such a way that it creates subjectivity. It's like putting the cart before the horse. It doesn't work. It's impossible. It's not improbable. It's not like, oh, well, we don't really understand it right now, and maybe in 100 years when we get more powerful microscopes and imaging systems, maybe we'll figure it out then. No, it's a literal logical impossibility. It's like trying to dig into someone's brain to find a dream. You're never going to find a dream by digging into someone's brain. A dream is existing in a completely different domain than this one. It's not contained within material atoms or anything like that. And I know that sounds absurd, but I'm trying to highlight the absurdity of saying that atoms somehow generate an internal subjective experience. It is not a question of not having enough information about it, or maybe we'll figure it out someday. It is 100% a logical impossibility, and you can know that it's false just like you know that 2 + 2 = 64 is false. You know that that's false by examining the logical definitions of the system that you're working in and what that entails. You can know also that matter cannot generate subjectivity. Now, okay, so I'm going to cut that element short, all right? I could go on and on and on and on about that, but to like fully elucidate this, it would have to be a course, to be honest. Like, it's not something you can just say in 20 minutes. But here's the easier, more intuitive way to understand this, and this comes into the idea of infinity. So here's a more intuitive way to understand this, and this is the idea that infinity is tied to also the concept of zero. So every single one of us is an eternal mind, and we are a system of frequencies. Now, these frequencies are all mathematical. This is a mathematical reality. Remember, this is a rational reality. The reality is the set of all things that can be and are, that don't contain rational contradictions, that don't contain conflicting elements. It's everything that is possible, where everything that is impossible does not exist. Non-existence is impossible because existence can exist and must exist. But setting that aside, we are beings of frequency. We are mathematical beings of frequency. And because we contain every element within ourselves, because we contain every mathematical frequency within ourselves, you can imagine that we contain every single value. So because we contain every single value, our total is zero. So that's because every positive balances out to a negative. If we have infinite positive energy and infinite negative energy such that every positive is paired with a negative, our total result as a singular entity is zero. We contain infinite energy, but we are also a zero. Now, this is why we call what you are a zeta, because a zeta is a very specific concept. It's a triune concept. It's a 1, it's a 0, and it's infinity. That's what you are. You are a 1 infinity that balances to 0. You are 1 in that you are a complete self-contained system of frequency. You are an infinity in that the energy that you contain is infinite. And you are a 0 in that the energy that you contain balances to perfect 0. So if we understand this, the fact that we are representative as zetas, as this triple concept of as one infinite 0. That's what we are, 1 infinite 0, a zeta. And if we understand this concept, we realize that logically, we have to exist and must exist, because if we understand 0 to be representative of nothingness, there's nothing to prevent its existence. 0 is something that has to exist and must exist. And again, an intuitive way to understand this is think about the concept of nothing. Nothing is not something that you can create, and nothing is not something that you can destroy. Nothing is nothing. So if you imagine 0 as being representative of nothing, nothing just is, always has to be, and always will be, because you cannot destroy it and you cannot create it. Now, we are not an empty nothing, we are a full nothing. We are a void that is not empty, but pulsing with the eternal frequencies of all reality that give rise to everything. So when we understand reality, if we are looking for a rational and logical answer to what existence is, the answer is found in the concept of our mandatory existence, and this can be understood in terms of 0, and that we have to exist and we must exist. We are eternal zeros. Now, like I said, this is a quick and intuitive way to understand it. To dive into it further, I highly recommend you check out the video that I created called The Answer to the Greatest Philosophical Question of All Time, where I dive into more detail about why existence is mandatory. All right? So your subjectivity has to exist, it must exist, it is eternal, it is like energy. Because it is energy, it cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. It's a logical existence. It's an existence that must occur. Now, let's see. This is a long article here. So I want to see, because I have more that I need to say about this, because this is really about catalyzing a thought process in your mind. See, a lot of this information, if you're sticking with me right now, by the way, I highly commend you, because these types of videos, I always say, these types of videos are the most important videos. We'll talk about Gnosticism and secret rituals they might have done, and the demiurge and all this stuff. And those are important and they are interesting. But this information is what really, if you start to integrate it, if you start to think about it, is what starts to begin, what catalyzes a new consciousness, the formation of a new consciousness, because you are exposing yourself to new ideas and new ways of thinking that may seem foreign at first, ways that, I haven't really thought about things this way. And they might even seem confusing or like, what do you mean? But the point is that this is exposing your mind to new ideas that begins the process of thinking about things in new ways. And that might, seem kind of simple, but this is what's important, because look, I'm not here and I don't create these videos to tell people what to think. I create videos to give people the tools to understand how to think for themselves. And this is why this is important, because when you're given information like this, it starts your mind to consider these concepts and play with them and think about them. And I don't want you to believe what I'm saying just because I'm saying it. I want you to think about it. I want you to reason about it. I want you to think about it in your own mind and begin to rationalize yourself and see where it leads you. You're on this journey yourself. And raising consciousness isn't about telling people what things are. It's about giving people the tools to know thyself, to look within. And this is part of that catalyzing process. And some people may find this boring, but because it's so outside of the, standard way of thinking. But for those who don't, for those who begin to engage with it, for those who really begin to use it as a catalyst to begin to explore these new thoughts and new ideas, like, again, I commend you if you are watching this video right now, because these are the important videos. Now, I want to continue here to see what Deepak Chopra is saying. So Deepak Chopra says, to begin with, where did everything come from leads to some deceptive answers and dead ends. If you claim that everything came from a single creator with human qualities, like God or the gods, there's no proof. You are basically looking in a mirror and seeing nature as a reflection of human nature. We do this all the time. Let's see. So it says, to a physicist, something from nothing really means no thing. So this is Deepak Chopra stating that, some scientists, to try and explain the state prior to the Big Bang, point out things like quantum vacuum, zero-point energy, virtual reality, or the multiverse, but the same fatal flaws applies. Who created it or what created it? And that's what we were talking about earlier, how you move the question one back further. And Deepak Chopra is essentially pointing out that they do this all the time, where he uses the examples of quantum vacuum, zero-point energy, virtual reality, or the multiverse. Maybe this is a virtual reality, or it's a product of quantum fluctuations. But again, these do not provide answers to existence. If it's a simulation, what created the simulation? If it's a quantum vacuum, how does the quantum vacuum exist? Where did that come from? And he's very right in pointing this out, and that's absolutely correct. So he says the problem with every creation story is time. We can't help but assign a time when creation began. If origin equals the starting point, time is necessary. Eternity gets mixed up with time in the process. Most people believe that they will receive eternal life when they go to heaven, and they equate eternity with a long, long, long time. And that's absolutely right. Eternity, like I said before, is not a very long time. Eternity is not something that even has a beginning. Eternity is without beginning and without end. Now, I want to talk about this idea of remembering here. Okay, so imagine this, right? You are an eternal being, and every single one of us is an eternal being. We are all eternal beings. Okay, so imagine, I'm saying imagine that that's what you are, but it is what you are. But think about what that is like. Imagine what it is like to be an eternal being. Now, I'm going to tell you what it's like is boring. It would be boring if we didn't have the capacity to forget, but we do have the capacity to forget. Now, this is the critical idea. This is the critical concept to understand, and how it can kickstart the process of remembering or coming to the conclusion rationally of what you are, where we are, and why we are here. Because eternity without the ability to forget would be hell. It would be torture. Think about existing forever. Now, on top of that, we together form a singular mind. And we act as a singular mind. We act as one mind. And when we are in complete and total identity, it is as though we are one mind. Think about it like this. Imagine, minds that are eternal going through eternity together. In an eternal journey of minds together, they become so intimately related to one another that they become structurally one mind. If you think about spending eternity with a group of minds, you will begin to relate to one another and evolve to higher planes of existence where you essentially form a singular consciousness, like a brain made of many nodes. That's what will occur because you will have existed together for eternity and therefore synchronized, resolved all differences. And after, remember, this is eternity. This is not 100 years or 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years. This is a very, 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 it's not even a long time. It's eternity. So you get to a point where you are a singular mind. So imagine being a singular mind for eternity. Hell, torture. You are one, all alone. And that's all there is you. However, luckily, we have the capacity to forget. Now, of course, this isn't lucky. This is because it's embedded into the fabric of existence. We have the ability to arrange our internal information into various patterns. And so this enables us to throw ourselves into forgetfulness and shatter ourselves into a multiplicity of particular viewpoints or particular windows. And these are individual minds, individual zetas, individual souls. As individual zetas, we consider ourselves zetas. The totality, the network of all that we are, is the zeta configuration. And that is the absolute. That is the one mind that we are. But because we can vary our internal frequency patterns, because we can vary this, we can throw ourselves into a state of forgetfulness and particularity where we no longer relate to each other in perfection. And we are no longer a network mind that is operating in synergy. It is now operating where each mind is operating independently and on its own because it hasn't realized that it's part of an interconnected system. And you'll see that this is sort of what saves us for the eternal hell and boredom of a singular existence in eternity, is our ability to forget and exist in a multiplicity of particular nodes, which we all are, these eternal nodes that can exist in different particular modes of existence. And the occultist Aleister Crowley actually said this very well. I've said this quote many times on my channel because it's a beautiful quote and it really encapsulates the idea here. So Aleister Crowley said, speaking as all reality, as existence, says, "For I am divided for love's sake, for the chance of union. This is the creation of the world, that the pain of division is as nothing, and the joy of dissolution all." So to take a look at this quote, what he's saying is, for I am divided for love's sake, for the chance of union. Basically this idea that when we are a unity, we forget and divide and fracture to go on the journey of coming together as a unity again. And these cycles are universal cycles. These are cosmic cycles. These are cycles of the physical universe, or what we call the holos. So we are eternal, and the physical universe goes through cycles of coming into existence and out of existence as different configurations of our internal frequency patterns when they are related to each other in a way that creates separation. Because this entire realm is a realm of such separation. Think about it. I am here and you are over there. That person is short. This person is tall. This person has long hair. This person has short hair. This person has blue eyes. This one has brown eyes. There's a table. This is a realm of separation. This is a realm of difference. And because this is a realm of separation and a realm of difference, this is what gives us the ability to come together and unite. If we weren't separated, we wouldn't have the opportunity to come together and unite. So yeah, a lot of people have a hard time understanding, well, if we are a unity, why would we fracture and separate into particularities? Precisely to save ourselves from the eternal torment of being a singular being for all eternity. We are able to exist in these various stories, and we're basically playing a game. This is a cosmic game that we are essentially playing with each other, that we are going through these it was, I believe, Alan Watts who said something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing this, that reality is God pretending that it's not, or something like that. Reality is a game where God is pretending that it's not God, or something along those lines. And that's essentially the idea here, is that we are all reality. We are all existence. We are God that has shattered itself into a division and a multiplicity to forget. And another thing that arises, and that some people say when they begin to learn this and understand this and begin to have that sort of intuitive recollection of what they are, people ask, well, okay, if that's the case, if that is true, why should we begin to remember that? If the whole point was to throw ourselves into forgetfulness, well, why should we start to remember that we're all reality? Why should we start to remember that we form an interconnected unity? And that's because we want to get to the stage where we can have the best of both worlds, where we understand that we are a unity and we can use that to create a better game for ourselves. Where before, this is why we're engaged in bloody warfare and division and nation against nation, religion against religion, because of all the fracture and division and not understanding what we are. So we're trying to essentially get to that point where we realize what we are, but we realize what we are within this world filled with beautiful opportunities to have together, in that realization where we can realize, oh, you know what? We're playing a game together. We can build a better game. We can start to enjoy it. We can create a new world. And that's exactly in our Neogenian system what we aim to do by creating a teleocratic planetary civilization that creates the world in the image of what we are. And this means creating teleocratic. Telos comes from the Greek word telos, which means purpose. A purposeful world, a purposeful civilization where the goal is not greed or money or domination or control or any of that bullshit that runs the world today, but rather together as a people we are united in the common teleocratic principle to increase the quality of life for all, to increase the quality of life for the individual and the collective. And that goes to show, if you imagine what a different world that we would have today if all the money that goes towards war and all the effort that goes towards, look at all the trillions of dollars that are poured into warfare, and imagine if all of that were redirected to give everyone a better life. Imagine if just that one singular change, if everyone in the world, all the countries in the world decided to stop fighting and use the funds that they are using to fund this perpetual war machine to kill, instead use those funds to create life, to make life better. Right now, all of our money is going to eliminate life and destroy life and crush life. Do you see how backwards this world is? How inverted this world is, where we use our resources to destroy ourselves, when that doesn't have to be the case. We can use these resources to increase the quality of life for all and have an enjoyable experience. And you can understand the effects of this when everyone's like, oh man, I can't wait to die and go to heaven, or I can't wait to escape the cycle of incarnation. Everyone wants to escape this place because it's become a horrible world. But it doesn't have to. The whole point, the reason why we are here, is to understand and harness our ability as conscious creators to create a world that reflects the fundamental nature of existence, meaning our interconnected unity, to create a world that reflects our interconnected unity, where we are creating and thriving together to create that planetary teleocratic civilization right here and right now. That kingdom of heaven on Earth, not somewhere else, not in the clouds, not in the sea, not anywhere that your pastor, preacher, or whatever is telling you. It is our ability to look within and create it and externalize it. We are gods and we have that ability. We have that power. And this is why this information like this is imperative. It's important. It is critical, because this is not just, this is like, really entertaining video. I mean, that gives me something to chew on, and that was fun. Now let me go watch a movie or something. And if you do, and that's not to say, you can find this video entertaining or whatever, that's fine. But what I mean to say is, these videos are not created to be like, isn't this a interesting idea to think about? No, it's about, this is what needs to occur right here and right now to create a better world. This is not just some like, let's talk about some weird ancient conspiracy that happened 20,000 years ago or something. This is about giving people the tools and the information to create a real change in themselves and the world, to give people the ability to take back their minds, to learn how to think for themselves and delete all this bullshit conditioning and brainwashing and the toxicity of a manufactured society that exists to just keep you in a perpetual state of bondage and working and consuming and fighting. That's all people want you to be. You're nothing but a consumer, a worker, and a soldier. And that is bullshit. And it's time that we reject that and take our place as creators of this world and expose individuals to a new way of thinking that opens their mind to the possibility of a new future, because everything is born in the mind, and a new world will only be born when people understand that it's possible and reach that new level of consciousness. And so that's why these types of videos are important, to spread this information, to catalyze a new consciousness. So like I said, I really, if you're someone who watched this video from beginning to end and you got to this point, seriously, I commend you. That's great. And have a lot of respect for you. And I think you should, feel good about that, because guess what? A lot of people don't give a crap about this stuff. They just want to hear about some weird conspiracy that happened or something. And a lot of that stuff's fun to talk about, and I'll talk about those things. But this is the important information. This is the real work. This is about unleashing the power within your mind so that we can create a new world right here and right now. And that is what's important. So I hope you enjoyed this video. There's actually a lot more that I wanted to talk about, but I'm looking at the time. This is going on for a while, so I'll perhaps make more videos along these lines. But check out my other videos. This is not something that can be easily explained in even 45 minutes or an hour or however long this is. That's something that, it takes a while to understand this stuff. But again, thank you for watching this video. It's important. And please like and subscribe so that we can get more information, more people to watch videos like this. And if you want to support my channel and see it grow, support on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial. Helps out a lot. That's the best way to help out my channel and helps me create bigger and better videos. And you get access to all of our members only videos. There's a new members only video every single week. In fact, we're having one right now that ties in really well with what we're talking about. And that is that science is losing the war on consciousness as we talk about mind versus science. That's what our members only video is going to be about. So once again, you can check that out by going to patreon.com/MorgueOfficial or hitting the join button on YouTube right below this video, tier 2 or higher for members only videos. And hey, remember, this isn't church, so don't feel obligated to support monetarily. You don't have to. There are plenty of free ways you can support, like liking, sharing, and subscribing. That being said, it does help out a lot, and I want to give a big shout out to everyone who does support, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Enki, Nuselina, Paul Rogers, Eric Fire, Massam, Christopher Smith, and everyone else. Thank you very much.